Greetings, beautiful people. My name is Simon Javan Okelo. I am the host of Madaraka Podcast, and also I'm the CEO and founder of Madaraka Festival. I'm really excited to bring you today's episode, recorded here at the Seattle Drum School of Music in Georgetown, Seattle. And I'm really excited to introduce my guest today, Hayleigh Hayhurst, who is the CEO and founder of Espresso podcast production and also the host of Podcast Café. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me on, Simon.
Excellent. What did I miss in the introduction that you want to add so that we ensure that we give you all your flowers?
I mean, that was a great introduction. I started my business 5 years ago, which I'm sure we'll get into. I'm originally from Las Vegas, moved to Seattle 5 years ago and started my business. And in addition to Podcast Café, I'm also the host of Employee to Boss podcast, which is my first podcast I started for my business, which I'm sure we'll get all into.
I love that. Yeah, I want to ensure that everybody is watching, especially those who are into podcasting. Please grab a piece of paper and a pen so that you can get all the wisdom and the ideas that Hayleigh is going to be sharing with us, because she works with, podcasters, business owners, and brands to help them increase revenue through podcasting. But for now, I want you to take us back to maybe when you are 5 to 10 and share with us some of the sounds, some of the smells, the foods, the music that you grew up with that really shaped who you are today.
Yeah. Okay. So like I said, I grew up in Las Vegas, and I don't know, I think some of my earliest memories are, of course, the heat and how hot it is there.
Yeah.
Vegas has a great food scene, lots of great food. My mom was a pretty good cook, too, so we had lots of family-cooked dinners and grew up with a sister, so we always would spend the summers like at the pool, or our favorite place to go growing up was Laguna Beach in California. So I just remember going there all the time and spending time at the beach with my family and getting like the best tacos ever down there.
Wow. I was just about to ask you, what was your mom's favorite meal that you really loved the most growing up?
My mom she really likes to grill. Because I don't know, you can spend so much time outside. Yeah. So she'd grill lots of like chicken or, just different things.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So, spent most of your young years, maybe teenage years, and moved to Seattle 5 years ago.
Yes.
How did you move to Seattle, and why?
Yeah.
Like, why Seattle?
Yeah. So I had been working. I graduated December 2019 from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where I was studying journalism with a minor in film and political studies. Yeah. Very random things. But so I was working at a company, UFC at the time, the, MMA company. During the pandemic, I was laid off because sports were over, combat sports were all over. So my post-grad life, I didn't exactly envision being unemployed and living at my mom's house. That was just not part of the vision. Yeah. So I moved up to Seattle because one of my friends lived up here already. She went to college here, and we went to high school together, and somehow she convinced me. And I really didn't think I would be in Seattle for more than a year, but I ended up loving it, starting my business, meeting a ton of cool people. Even though it was during the pandemic, I felt like Seattle was exactly what I wanted, just with the whole outdoor scene. And I don't know, people are, I think, contrary to popular belief, people are really friendly here.
Yeah, it depends with how you also you engage with people. Yeah. I think it's all about how you engage with people.
For sure.
But also who you are, If you're not friendly, you're going to meet the Seattle freeze,
Yes. Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. If you don't want to be frozen, you'll always find people that you can engage with.
Yeah, and people in Vegas are really friendly. Everyone works for tips and like the restaurant industry. So I feel like it's just a really outgoing space. And so I worked at a few bars while I lived there. And I think that I used to be really shy, which is kind of funny because now I'm like the total opposite. But I think just putting myself out there, you're right. It definitely, whatever you put out there, you definitely get back, I think.
Yeah, I love that. You've done so much with your life. And I just want you to maybe break a piece of it which is directly related to podcasting, because that's how I know you. You know, I feel like you're one of the local Seattle podcasting experts, and I've always been curious to understand how you got into podcasting, how you created. You have multiple podcasting brands. You have your production company, Espresso Podcast Production. Yes. Then you have Podcast Café. Yep. And then from employee to boss. Yes. Just break it down for us. How did you get into this? But then why do you have these 3 brands? And maybe take a deep dive into one of them, you know? Sure. And just share a little more. Yeah, definitely. So my love for podcasting really started when I was in college. Like I said, I went to school for journalism, but at the time I was working this really boring job, and I was basically like a receptionist, but the door was locked and no one ever came in. So I don't know why I was there. So all I did with my day was listen to podcasts. Oh, wow. I'd listen to business podcasts, writing podcasts, true crime podcasts. That was all I would do for 8 hours. Wow. Podcasts. Yeah. And since I went to school for journalism, we had access to podcasting studios or recording rooms. And so a friend of mine and I decided to start our own podcast. She also worked at the same company as I was at the time, so we had lots of time to plan and, you know, do all of this. So our podcast at the time was about wrestling. Oh. That's so funny. So we were big fans of WWE. Yeah. She still does the podcast today. She is doing amazing with it. It's called Wrestling Wind Down. Yeah. She was so passionate about it. And when my passion started to dwindle, I was like, okay, you're doing such amazing things with this brand. Yeah. Like, run with it. Yeah. And she, like I said, is doing such amazing things. Yeah. So that's when I moved up to Seattle. Yeah. And just to maybe share a little bit about wrestling, I grew up in Africa, in Kenya. Yeah. And for a while, in the entire neighborhood, there was only one neighbor who had a TV, you know? So everybody, when it was wrestling time, which was Tuesday at 7 p.m., the whole neighborhood would converge. Some people would be on the window watching wrestling. That's so funny. So it's a big culture. Yes. It's a big culture globally. And it's, I know that it started here in the U.S. For me, right now, it's quite interesting because sometime at Washington Hall, there's a live wrestling match happening. Oh, cool. And it's being recorded. And in Vegas, where some of the games happen, it's real. It's more real than back in Africa, where you know about wrestling, but people actually think it's more real. They don't think it's acting. But when you watch it live, like at Washington Hall, or, you know, you create a podcast about it, you go into depth that, you know, it's just a game, you know? 100%, yeah, it's just a game. Yeah. So what did you guys talk about in that podcast? Well, we made our focus on women wrestlers, and kind of, when we first started, it was more of recaps of what happened during the shows. And then as we, you know, evolved it over, I think I did it for about a year with her. That's when we talked more about, like, women wrestlers and the characters. But I think what really I learned during that time was how to do, like, the research beyond, like, oh, I just want to start a podcast. More of how are we going to actually stand out in this space. I will say back in, like, 2018, there were not a lot of women talking about wrestling in a podcast. Yeah. So we had a cool space to be able to not only see how we could stand out, but also create the content around it to, you know, grow and connect with really cool people across the country. I mean, back then, you know, as we were talking before we pressed record, podcasting has changed a lot since back then. So it's really cool to see, like, you know, how we started versus what she's doing now, and then me doing completely something in a whole different niche, like how everyone can be successful in whatever podcast they choose. Yeah, I love that. Now, I want us to come back to you arriving in Seattle because you are getting into that part, and then tied with how you started Espresso podcast production or Podcast Café, you know. I'm asking this because from there I want us to build into a few questions just around podcasting in general.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So when I moved up to Seattle, I didn't think my background in podcasting would get me anywhere. I really didn't. Like, it was my cousin's cousin who reached out to me, who I'd met like at a family party years ago. And she knew about my previous podcast because I was posting about it, and, you know, she followed me on Instagram. And so when I moved up to Seattle, she had a podcast about business. She did personal branding. And so she basically asked me, hey, I don't have the time to do it. Do you want to do it for me? I'll pay you. And I was like, okay, sure. Great, thanks. And so I was doing all the editing, and then looking at her podcast, I was looking at like where she could grow it, or, you know, where she could utilize more in her business or on social media. And this was like early days of my podcasting journey still. So she had me doing everything, and then she was like, you're good at this. Do you want me to introduce you to some people who could use your services? And so that was how Espresso Podcast Production was born, just based off of that one connection and then referrals.
When was it?
This was in 2020.
2020.
So almost 5 years ago. But that was when and then a year later is when I started my first business podcast, Employee to Boss. I started that because I didn't know anyone in Seattle. When I moved here, I knew 2 people total. I didn't know anyone in the business world other than my clients and maybe a few people they connected me with. And I'd go to, on Instagram, and I was like, how do all these people know everyone? Like, and then even on Instagram, I have a hard time sometimes building relationships off of just like social media. It's difficult.
Like the situation with me.
Right.
When I saw, I have to first commend you with Espresso Podcast Production, because the way you've built that brand is what drew me to you, and also as a podcaster who started podcasting around the pandemic, I've podcasted consistently. I have over 1,000 episodes between this podcast and my previous podcast, which, I post, but has a lot of incredible content. Anyway, I got to a place where I was looking for help, similar to your cousin's cousin. And who suggested that, you take this on and do it, So I was looking for help, podcasting consultants, people I can collaborate with.
Totally.
And so I saw you and DM'd you. Continue.
So, well, I'm glad that we met later on. Because
me too.
Definitely. But no, so the reason I started Employee to Boss was because I wanted people to, I was like, everyone loves talking about themselves, and I want to meet more people. So if I have a podcast, people will come and talk to me for 45 minutes to an hour. I'll get to know them. It'll be a new connection, and I'll get a podcast out of it. So it was truly for networking. Like, if I didn't make a single dollar from that podcast, I was going to be okay with it because I needed to meet people. Like, that was the goal. And I have made money from it, but that was never my intention to start. It was just to, of course, support in my business growth, but more than that, just meet more people, because it's difficult sometimes in the online space.
I agree. And also, like, if you want to meet real people, for me, if someone is willing to be on your podcast, they're willing to create a deeper connection, and the deeper the connection you have with people, then you can trust them to do business together, to build community together. One of the questions I wanted to ask you was around community, because I feel that you're using your network, your podcasting skills, really to build community. Why is this so important to you?
They always say, like, it's really who you know is the most important thing. And I'm pretty extroverted, so I love meeting people, but I think the connections that we can make through podcasts are so valuable. like the more niche you are, the more you can grow with like a certain audience. So whether that's the location you're in or the niche you're in or industry or whatever it is, I think there's a lot of value in community. Like across the board, I don't think any business would survive without having a community. And a podcast is a way to nurture that. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a lot of people on social media that will, you know, put out a ton of content, but it's hard for you to connect with your audience fully without being able to speak to them. And even if it is through a podcast, you know, that's a way for them to build trust with you and you can, you know, grow with them. So that's why I think the community focus can really be nurtured through podcasting.
Yeah, I love that. Recently, I've also seen you involved with a lot of events, fundraisers that your company has sponsored. And I feel like I've seen you in different pockets of the community, which is why I brought the previous question. I'm still going to come back to like a lot more podcasting conversation. But for now, I just want you to, when you look back the last 5 years, you've been in Seattle for 5 years.
Yeah.
What are some of the significant communities that you've built that you'd advise someone who has just arrived in Seattle to consider, you know?
Yeah. Okay. So since I did get here during the pandemic, there was no in-person networking at first, which is why the podcast was so important to me. Mm-hmm. When I did start in-person networking, I joined this one called CEO Society Seattle. They're a women's networking event. They meet on Mercer Island, actually. And that was like game changer. It was really amazing to see all of these women in a room that had businesses or were growing their businesses at different, you know, levels. And it was just really empowering because I didn't grow up really in a family of entrepreneurs. My grandparents have a business and then, you know, my family works for the business. So I did see them in that instance, but I never really saw the growth part of it. Mm-hmm. So it was really cool to see other entrepreneurs in a room. Mm-hmm. You know, I go to a ton of events. Like you said, I go to a ton of Seattle Chamber of Commerce events, like different networking groups that I get invited to. I'm joined this one called Seattle Executives. I spend a lot of my week networking because, you know, that's what I enjoy doing. I love meeting people and I love helping people, you know. I still meet people who don't know that podcast production can be done for them. They're like, oh, you produce podcasts? I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah. And it kind of surprises me sometimes, but I think that's what holds so many businesses back from podcasting. Mm-hmm. And I really think every business should have a podcast to nurture and grow. Mm-hmm. So I love giving them the opportunity to do that just by getting, you know, most of the time, like I'll never walk in a room and they're like, yes, let me hire you, right? Yeah. But the connections I make are way more important than anything else.
Two things I want to just talk about regarding everything you just said. Mm-hmm. Number one, most companies also don't know that they can have an internal podcast for their staff members to listen to other team members, whether it's their bosses or experts, speak about specific things, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
And then there is the external podcast where they can be speaking about an upcoming campaign, speaking about different products, getting testimonials from their customers, you know? And so how you spoke about the value of podcasts for every brand, even churches.
Even churches, yes, everyone.
Everyone needs a podcast. I agree with that completely.
Yeah.
Now, I want us to go a little further. You know, let's say that there are a bunch of podcasters who are watching this conversation. Mm-hmm. These are now not companies, but people who are almost giving up because I feel that as an entrepreneur, you've probably dealt with so much imposter syndrome, so much challenges in running your business that you're almost always between, oh, I should just drop this and go and get a job, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Or I should, you know, if I
had $1 for every time I said that.
Right? Speak to that. Like, how do you build the resilience and the patience to keep going no matter what? And what should other people who are on the same journey or even further behind and they're looking for encouragement, what would you tell them?
Yeah. I think one of the most valuable things that I did when I first started my business was hired a mindset coach. I was really nervous to make investments into a business that I was making money, but I wasn't making a ton of money, right? And so I hired this mindset coach, and she absolutely changed the way I thought about business. I think she really saved me from a lot of burnouts, because when you're first starting, like, I started helping people with their podcast, but I also started as a virtual assistant too. So I was doing lots of admin tasks, lots of Facebook group growth. Remember when Facebook groups were like the biggest thing? That was what I was doing a ton of. And I didn't love it. I loved everything to do with podcasting, but I didn't love everything to do with virtual assistant work. And it was just something I had to do if I wanted to make money to then, you know, there was a pivotal moment where I was like, I'm dropping all my virtual assistant clients and I'm going all into podcasting. And that really helped. So I think at first, yes, you have to just take all the opportunities you can get, test it out. Because what if I love virtual assistant work, right? Like, I would have I could go into that. There's tons of amazing, successful virtual assistants. But that just wasn't my passion. But I'm glad that I spent time doing that to find that out, and of course making money to support what I was passionate about. So I think when you first start, like, you're not going to love everything about your business, and I think that's kind of the danger zone of like, do I want to even do this? And so I think seeing the bigger picture, and that's something that the mindset coach really helped me with. And of course, like, my support, my friends, they all think what I do is amazing, so they're, you know, they can cheer me on when I'm having a tough time with a client, or, you know, whatever comes up. If social media is like driving me crazy, or, you know, online haters, or whatever you get, it's just kind of like, it's good to have people to rely on, whether that is friends, family, or, you know, coaching support.
I love that. Well, and now I understand why you're in podcasting, because you're very well spoken. You know, you.
Thanks. I wasn't always like this, I will say.
And you said that working at some bars in Vegas actually helped you build the confidence.
Yes.
I like that. How did this actually bring this side of you, this expressive, bubbly, shiny character?
Yeah. Well, I used to be really shy, like I said, like really shy. And then I studied abroad when I was in college. I went to Prague. I didn't know anyone there. No one from my school went. It was just like, I was really out in this country alone. I had roommates that I had just met. And so that was when I was like, okay, well, if I want to meet people and like have a good time, I'm going to have to go and like break out of my shell. So that helped a lot. And then working at bars, I think or restaurants, whatever it is, teaches you a lot of life lessons of like how to deal with difficult people, and how to not take it personally, and how to laugh things off. And I think having fun with that, and just like playing off someone else's energy, whether it's like good or bad, like that, that's a whole thing. And so that really helped too. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, there are certain things that we have a Swahili saying that usipofunzwa na mamako utafunzwa na ulimwengu, which means if your mother didn't teach you, the world will teach you.
Oh, I love that.
And I love how you actually went out to seek knowledge and to transform yourself, you know. I love that. Anyway, for those who are just joining us, my name is Simon Javan Okelo. I am the host of the Madaraka Podcast, and I'm hosting an amazing guest today, Hayleigh Hayhurst, who is the CEO and founder of Espresso Podcast Production, and also the host of two incredible podcasts, Podcast Café and From Employee to Boss, right?
Yes.
Now, I want you to take a minute and look at this camera and invite everyone who is watching our conversation today to join us for Madaraka Festival, which is August 30th, 2025 at Pier 62.
Okay.
Then I'll tell you more about Madaraka Festival after that.
Perfect. I'd love to invite everyone to come join us at Madaraka Festival on August 30th at Pier 62 on August
30th,
2025.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. I started Madaraka Festival here in Seattle at Museum of Pop Culture 11 years ago. At the time, I was very new as an African immigrant in the US, and I had just moved from Kenya, where I was running an education, music, and art program. I was DJing, making money, then putting it into this program that was giving youths alternatives to guns and violence. Mm-hmm. And so when I came here, I was like, I'm going to continue doing what I was doing in Kenya, organizing events, bringing people together. And that's how Madaraka Festival came about. So now in its 11th year, it's continuing to do the same work, growing that space that we have in Kenya, continuing to galvanize the African diaspora community and other creatives and artists like you, Do you know anything about Madaraka Festival? Did you do your own research?
I did a little bit, but okay. I'm excited to attend this year. And I had the privilege of seeing you perform at Pano Ranch, which was amazing. So I can only imagine how great the festival is.
Yeah. I'm headlining the festival for the first time.
Amazing.
So I've done it for 11 years. We've brought different artists from different parts of Africa to perform and headline the festival. And over the last 3 years, I've been working on being an artist myself, Yeah. And so this year is the year I'm headlining the festival, and you have to be there, but also help me spread the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, excellent. Now, I want you to look at this camera again and just share with people who are watching how they can stay connected with you, how they can support the work that you do. And also your social media handles, maybe anything that you want to speak about that I didn't ask.
Definitely. Yeah. So you can connect with me on my website, espressopodcastproduction.com, or I'm also very active on Instagram. That's where I mainly hang out. I have a ton of free resources for people who have podcasts or want to start a podcast. I have a free podcast launch checklist that you can get at espressopodcastproduction.com/checklist. And I also have those 2 podcasts. So Employee to Boss is all about the entrepreneurial journey. So I interview people about where they started and how they got to where they are now. So it's really actionable steps that you can take to start your own business or grow it. Then Podcast Café, it's all about insights from podcasters for podcasters. So if you want to hear more about maybe your favorite podcast or how people podcast, because there's a million different ways that you could do that, that is what that show is all about.
Excellent. Thank you so much for making the time to join me today for this episode of Madaraka Podcast. And to everyone who is watching, I want you to make sure you subscribe to the channel, give this video a thumbs up, and leave your comment below if today's conversation with Hayleigh inspired you. And also, Hayleigh, did you share tips for podcasters?
Oh, tips for podcasters.
Yeah, maybe 3 tips.
Okay, 3 tips.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love this. I ask at the end of my Employee to Boss episodes 3 action steps for people to take. So now I flipping it on me to answer now. So I'll say, number 1, I think showing up in your confidence, like even if you don't feel confident, show up how you want to be. And it's hard. You don't have to release your first episodes. Like truly just record to hear how you speak, your own voice, all of those things. So that's number 1, just show up. I would say number 2 is when you're starting a podcast, most likely, unless you want to do all solo episodes, which is totally fine, you could do that, reach out to some guests that you might want to have on. Be bold about it. Like, okay, yes, they might not all answer, but when I started Podcast Cafe, I was reaching out to these big podcasters, and people are just excited to share their stories. So that's step 2, just be bold and reach out to people you might want to feature. And then step 3, I would say, a podcast can be whatever you want it to be. So think, again, big picture. Think, what goals do you want to achieve in the next few years? I don't have 2 clients that have the same strategy for this reason. Success means different things to different people. So I think thinking big, and there's no rules. That's the cool thing about podcasting. It's still so new that there's no rules. So think big and just think, what would I want this to be? Whether it's like a talk show or just some niche podcast where you get to connect with cool people in your industry.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your summer and see you at Madaraka Festival.
Yes. Thanks so much for having me on.
Perfect. Thank you. Peace.